The jewelry store was a place where dreams sparkled under bright lights. It sat in the middle of a busy street, its windows filled with glittering necklaces, rings, and bracelets that caught the eyes of everyone passing by. People from all over the city came here, hoping to find something special for themselves or their loved ones. The air inside smelled faintly of polish and leather, mixed with the soft hum of conversations between customers and sales associates. It was a world of luxury, but also one of hard work. Amara had been working at the store for nearly 2 years now. She wasn't just any employee. She was someone who cared deeply about her job. Every morning she arrived early, dressed neatly in her uniform, ready to help anyone who walked through the door. Her coworkers liked her because she was kind and always willing to lend a hand. But there was more to Amara than met the eye. Outside of her shifts, she spent hours sketching designs for clothes and accessories, dreaming of the day when she could launch her own fashion line. For now, though, this job paid the bills and gave her experience dealing with people. On this particular afternoon, the store buzzed with activity. A holiday season was approaching, and shoppers were flooding in, eager to pick out gifts for their families and friends. Some browsed casually while others rushed around trying to make quick decisions. Amara moved gracefully among them, offering assistance whenever needed. She smiled warmly, answered questions patiently, and made sure each customer felt valued. But then she walked in. Victoria Sterling entered the store like a storm cloud rolling into a sunny sky. Everyone seemed to notice her immediately. She wore a long fur coat, faux of course, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, and heels that clicked loudly against the polished floor. Around her neck hung several gold chains, and her fingers sparkled with rings. Victoria carried herself as if the whole world revolved around her, and in her mind it probably did. She was a well-known socialite, famous for hosting extravagant parties and appearing in glossy magazines. Yet behind the glamorous facade lay a personality that many found difficult to tolerate. As soon as Victoria stepped inside, she glanced around the room, scanning the faces of the employees. When her gaze landed on Amara, she paused for a moment, before snapping her fingers loudly. "You," she said sharply, pointing directly at Amara. "Come here." Amara hesitated only briefly before walking over. She kept her expression calm and professional, even though she sensed trouble brewing. "Good afternoon," she said politely. "How may I assist you?" Victoria removed her sunglasses dramatically, revealing piercing blue eyes that seemed to look down on everyone around her. "I need help finding a necklace," she declared, her tone clipped. "Something expensive, something rare. And don't waste my time showing me anything cheap." "Of course," Amara replied smoothly. "We have a wide selection of pieces that might interest you. Let me show you some options." For the next few minutes, Amara guided Victoria to different display cases, carefully explaining the features of various necklaces. Each piece was exquisite, crafted with care and precision. But no matter what Amara showed her, Victoria dismissed it with a wave of her hand. "Too flashy," she muttered once. Another time she sneered. "That looks like something my grandmother would wear." Her criticisms grew harsher with each passing second, until Amara began to feel like nothing would satisfy her. Despite the growing tension, Amara remained composed. She reminded herself that part of her job was to deal with difficult customers. Still, she couldn't ignore the way Victoria's words stung. There was an edge to her voice, a sharpness that went beyond mere dissatisfaction. It felt personal. At one point, Amara reached for a tray of diamond rings to show Victoria another option. As she turned back toward her, the tray slipped slightly in her hands. Though she managed to catch it before anything fell, the clatter drew gasps from nearby shoppers. Victoria's eyes narrowed instantly. "You're clumsy," she snapped, her voice rising so that everyone within earshot could hear. "What are you even doing here? Do they let just anyone work in a place like this?" Amara froze, her cheeks flushing red. She opened her mouth to respond, but Victoria cut her off. "Oh, wait. I see. They must think hiring people like you makes them look good. How quaint." The comment hung in the air, heavy and loaded. Amara knew exactly what Victoria meant by people like you. It wasn't the first time she'd encountered such remarks, but it never got easier to hear them. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "Ma'am," she said evenly, "if you'd prefer, I can call over another associate to assist you." "No," Victoria shot back, crossing her arms. "You're already here. Just try not to embarrass yourself further." Amara nodded stiffly and continued showing her items, though her hands trembled slightly. She could feel the weight of curious stares from other customers and co-workers. Some looked sympathetic while others seemed unsure of how to react. Despite the discomfort, Amara refused to let Victoria see how much her words affected her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Victoria selected a necklace, a stunning emerald pendant encrusted with diamonds. Amara rang up the purchase, careful to avoid making any mistakes. As she handed over the receipt, Victoria smirked. "Don't mess this up," she warned. "One wrong move, and trust me, you'll regret it." With that, Victoria turned on her heel and strode toward the exit. But before she reached the door, disaster struck. Amara accidentally bumped into a display stand while escorting another customer, causing a small tray of rings to tumble to the floor. The sound echoed through the store, drawing everyone's attention, including Victoria's. She spun around, her face contorted with rage. "That's it!" she shouted, marching back to where Amara stood. Without warning, she raised her hand and slapped Amara across the face. The impact was sudden and shocking. Amara staggered backward, her hand instinctively flying to her cheek. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away, refusing to let Victoria see her cry. The room fell silent, save for the faint murmur of horrified whispers. No one moved. No one spoke. From a hidden corner upstairs, a man watched the scene unfold on a security monitor. His jaw tightened and his fists clenched as he saw the slap land. This man was Dr. Marcus Thompson, Amara's father, and the owner of the jewelry store chain. He had built his empire from scratch, overcoming countless obstacles along the way. Now seeing his daughter treated so cruelly ignited a fire within him. Marcus leaned forward, his mind racing. He wanted to storm downstairs and confront Victoria himself, but he knew better. Instead, he picked up the phone and dialed a number. "Get me the manager," he ordered, his voice low and dangerous. "Now." Back in the store, Amara stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. Though shaken, she squared her shoulders and looked Victoria straight in the eye. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Victoria glared at her for a moment longer before spinning on her heel and storming out of the store. The tension in the room slowly eased, replaced by murmurs of disbelief and outrage. One by one, customers resumed their shopping, though their expressions betrayed their unease. As Amara retreated to the break room, her co-workers surrounded her, offering words of comfort and support. They assured her that what happened wasn't her fault, that Victoria's behavior was unacceptable. But deep down, Amara knew this incident would change things, for her, for the store, and perhaps even for Victoria herself. Little did anyone realize, however, that the real story was only just beginning. The slap echoed like a thunderclap, reverberating through the store and leaving behind a stunned silence. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Amara stood there, her cheek stinging from the force of Victoria's hand, her fingers still pressed against the spot where she had been struck. Her eyes were wide with shock, but beneath the surface something else stirred. Anger, hurt, and a deep sense of injustice. Yet, despite the turmoil raging inside her, Amara refused to let it show. She straightened her posture, squared her shoulders, and met Victoria's cold glare with an unwavering gaze. Victoria, on the other hand, appeared unbothered by what she had done. If anything, she looked smug, as though slapping someone in public was perfectly justified. She adjusted her coat, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles, and smirked at Amara. "That's what happens when you can't follow simple instructions," she said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Maybe next time you'll learn to be more careful." Her words dripped with condescension, each syllable laced with disdain. Several customers who had witnessed the altercation exchanged uneasy glances. Some whispered to one another, their expressions a mix of disbelief and disapproval. A few even pulled out their phones, discreetly recording the scene unfolding before them. Meanwhile, the store employees froze in place, unsure of how to react. No one had ever seen anything like this happen in the store before, and the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on all of them. Amara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a slow, deliberate breath, centering herself. The last thing she wanted was to give Victoria the satisfaction of seeing her breakdown. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but firm. "Is there anything else I can assist you with, ma'am?" she asked, her tone professional and composed. It was as if she hadn't just been slapped in front of dozens of people, as if the insult and humiliation meant nothing to her. Victoria blinked, momentarily caught off guard by Amara's composure. Clearly, she had expected tears, outrage, or some form of retaliation. But Amara's quiet strength threw her off balance. After a brief hesitation, Victoria sneered once more and turned on her heel, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor as she marched toward the exit. She paused briefly at the door, casting one final contemptuous glance over her shoulder before disappearing into the crowded street outside. As soon as Victoria left, the atmosphere in the store shifted. The tension that had gripped everyone moments earlier began to loosen, replaced by a wave of murmurs and whispers. Customers approached Amara cautiously, offering words of support and sympathy. One elderly woman patted her arm gently, saying, "Dear, don't let her get to you. She's not worth your tears." Another customer, a middle-aged man in a suit, shook his head in disgust. "I've never seen such behavior in my life," he muttered. "She should be ashamed of herself." Behind the counter, Amara's co-workers rallied around her, their faces filled with concern and admiration. "Are you okay?" one of them asked softly, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "That was completely unacceptable. We're here for you no matter what." "I'm fine," Amara replied, forcing a small smile. Her voice wavered slightly, betraying the emotions she was struggling to keep under control. It's frustrating, you know? Why does she think she can treat people like that?" No one had an answer to her question. They could only offer reassurances and solidarity, knowing full well that words alone couldn't erase the sting of what had happened. Still, their presence gave Amara a sense of comfort, reminding her that she wasn't alone in this. Upstairs, in a private office overlooking the sales floor, Dr. Marcus Thompson sat rigidly in his chair, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of his desk. His eyes were glued to the security monitor, replaying the incident over and over again. He had seen everything: the way Victoria had berated Amara, the dismissive comments, the cruel remarks, and finally the slap. Each frame burned itself into his memory, fueling the fire of anger that now coursed through his veins. Marcus was no stranger to adversity. He had faced discrimination and prejudice throughout his life, especially during the early days of building his business. But seeing his own daughter subjected to such treatment right under his roof was unbearable. His chest tightened with a mixture of fury and helplessness. Fury because no one deserved to be treated that way, least of all his beloved child. Helplessness because, despite being the owner of the store, he couldn't intervene directly without revealing his identity and jeopardizing the lessons he wanted Amara to learn about independence and resilience. For a long moment, Marcus simply stared at the screen, his mind racing. Then, with a deep breath, he reached for the phone on his desk and dialed a number. "Get me the store manager," he barked into the receiver, his voice low and commanding, "and tell him to come to my office immediately. This is urgent." Within minutes, the store manager, a tall, bespectacled man named Mr. Reynolds, arrived, looking visibly flustered. He had already heard about the incident from the staff and knew that something serious was brewing. As soon as he entered Marcus's office, he closed the door behind him and stood nervously in front of the desk. "Sir," Mr. Reynolds began, adjusting his tie, "I assume you've seen what happened downstairs?" "I have," Marcus replied, curtly, leaning forward in his chair. His piercing gaze locked onto Mr. Reynolds, making the manager squirm uncomfortably. "Tell me everything you know." Leave nothing out. Mr. Reynolds quickly recounted the details of the altercation, describing how Victoria had treated Amara and the events leading up to the slap. He also mentioned the reactions of the customers and employees, emphasizing the widespread outrage among those who had witnessed the scene. We've already received several complaints from customers demanding action, he added. And honestly, sir, I agree with them. What she did was completely unacceptable. Marcus nodded slowly, absorbing the information. Good, he said after a pause. Here's what we're going to do. First, review the security footage and gather any evidence we can use. Second, document every witness account, customers, employees, anyone who saw what happened. Third, prepare a formal complaint against Ms. Sterling. We will not tolerate this kind of behavior in our store, no matter who she is or how much money she has. Mr. Reynolds nodded vigorously, relief washing over him. Of course, sir, I'll get started on it right away. One more thing, Marcus added, his tone softening slightly. Make sure Amara is taken care of. She's strong, but even the strongest people need support sometimes. Let her know that we stand by her. 100%. Yes, sir, Mr. Reynolds replied earnestly. I'll make sure she knows. Once the manager left, Marcus leaned, back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He felt drained, both physically and emotionally. Running a successful business required tough decisions and sacrifices. But this was different. This was personal. And as much as he wanted to march downstairs and confront Victoria himself, he knew that wouldn't solve anything. Not yet, anyway. Downstairs, Amara retreated to the break room seeking a moment of solitude. Her co-workers followed her, insisting on staying by her side. They brought her a cup of tea and encouraged her to sit down, telling her stories of similar experiences they'd had with difficult customers. Their camaraderie helped ease some of the tension, and for the first time since the incident, Amara allowed herself to laugh. A quiet, hesitant laugh, but a laugh nonetheless. As the day wore on, news of the altercation spread beyond the walls of the jewelry store. Social media platforms lit up with posts and videos shared by witnesses who had recorded the scene. Hashtags like Stand with Amara and Justice for Employees began trending, drawing attention to the issue of workplace discrimination and abuse. Commenters expressed outrage at Victoria's actions, calling for accountability and change. Journalists picked up the story, turning it into a national conversation about privilege, power dynamics, and respect in professional settings. By the end of the day, Amara found herself at the center of a storm she hadn't anticipated. Reporters called the store, requesting interviews. Advocacy groups reached out, offering their support. Friends and strangers alike flooded her social media accounts with messages of encouragement. Through it all, Amara remained remarkably composed. Though inside, she grappled with conflicting emotions. Part of her felt empowered by the overwhelming show of solidarity. Another part, however, couldn't shake the lingering pain of the slap, the physical reminder of how easily cruelty could manifest in the world. As night fell and the store prepared to close, Amara stepped outside for some fresh air. The cool breeze brushed against her face, soothing the ache in her cheek. She looked up at the sky, dotted with stars, and took a deep breath. Despite everything that had happened, she felt a strange sense of clarity. This incident, painful as it was, had awakened something within her, a determination to rise above hatred and ignorance, to prove that kindness and grace were infinitely more powerful than arrogance and cruelty. The days following the incident at the jewelry store felt like a whirlwind for Amara. The story of Victoria Sterling's public outburst and the slap had spread far beyond the confines of the shop, igniting conversations across social media platforms, news outlets, and even dinner tables. People were outraged, not just because of what Victoria had done, but because it highlighted deeper issues about privilege, discrimination, and how society often failed to hold powerful individuals accountable for their actions. Amara, who had always preferred staying out of the spotlight, suddenly found herself thrust into the center of a national debate. Her name appeared in headlines alongside hashtags like Justice for Amara and Respect in Workplaces. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years reached out to express their support. Strangers sent her messages filled with encouragement, sharing their own stories of facing similar injustices. At first, Amara didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to being the focus of so much attention, let alone admiration. But as the days passed, she began to realize that this moment, painful as it was, could be an opportunity. An opportunity to speak up, not just for herself, but for others who might feel powerless in the face of abuse. Meanwhile, upstairs in his private office, Dr. Marcus Thompson continued to monitor the situation closely. He spent hours reviewing security footage, poring over witness statements, and strategizing with the store manager and legal team. While he admired Amara's resilience, he couldn't ignore the fact that his daughter had been humiliated in his own establishment. As the owner of the jewelry chain, it was his responsibility to ensure that such behavior was never tolerated again. But more than that, as a father, he wanted justice. Marcus decided to take matters into his own hands. He instructed the store manager to file a formal complaint against Victoria Sterling, citing assault and verbal harassment. Additionally, he authorized the release of the security footage to local authorities, ensuring that there was undeniable proof of what had transpired. "We're not doing this just for Amara," Marcus told Mr. Reynolds firmly. "This is bigger than her. It's about sending a message that no one, no matter how wealthy or influential, is above the law." While the gears of justice began turning behind the scenes, Victoria Sterling faced the full weight of public backlash. The video of her slapping Amara went viral almost overnight, drawing millions of views and sparking heated discussions online. Critics tore apart her character, calling her entitled, racist, and abusive. Brands that once clamored to work with her quickly distanced themselves, canceling endorsement deals and partnerships. High-profile friends stopped answering her calls, fearing association with someone whose reputation was crumbling faster than they could distance themselves. Victoria, however, refused to back down, at least publicly. In interviews with select journalists, she attempted to justify her actions, claiming that Amara had provoked her by being incompetent and unprofessional. These excuses only made matters worse. Viewers saw through her lies, pointing out the blatant racism and classism embedded in her words. One viral tweet summed up the collective sentiment perfectly. "If incompetence means dropping a tray of rings, then maybe we should all aim to be incompetent. At least we'd have integrity." As the pressure mounted, Victoria hired a high-profile lawyer to manage her public image and navigate potential legal consequences. Together, they crafted a carefully worded apology, which Victoria posted on her social media accounts. "I deeply regret any harm caused during my recent visit to the jewelry store," the statement read. "While I believe misunderstandings can happen, I acknowledge that my actions may have been perceived as inappropriate. Moving forward, I will strive to conduct myself with greater sensitivity." The response to her apology was overwhelmingly negative. Many viewed it as insincere and self-serving, lacking genuine remorse. Critics pointed out that Victoria hadn't explicitly apologized for slapping Amara or using racially charged language. Instead, she framed the entire incident as a misunderstanding, shifting blame onto those who dared to call her out. The half-hearted attempt did little to quell the growing calls for accountability. Behind closed doors, Victoria's life spiraled out of control. Once accustomed to luxury and adoration, she now found herself isolated and vilified. Her phone barely rang anymore, save for calls from her increasingly frustrated lawyer. Magazines that once featured her glamorous lifestyle now ran exposés detailing her history of toxic behavior. Even her family distanced themselves, embarrassed by the scandal she had created. It was during this chaotic period that Marcus decided to intervene personally. He arranged a private meeting with Victoria and her legal team, inviting them to the corporate headquarters of his jewelry chain. When Victoria arrived, flanked by her lawyer, she seemed smaller somehow, less imposing, than the woman who had stormed into the store days earlier. Gone was the designer coat and oversized sunglasses. Instead, she wore a simple black dress, her usual confidence replaced by nervous fidgeting. Marcus greeted her coolly, his demeanor calm yet authoritative. He gestured for her to sit across from him at a sleek glass table where stacks of documents awaited. Before speaking, he took a moment to study her, noting the dark circles under her eyes and the tension in her posture. Despite everything, he felt a flicker of pity. Not for Victoria herself, but for the person she had become. Power and privilege had warped her sense of morality, leaving her ill-equipped to handle consequences. "Ms. Sterling," Marcus began, his voice steady and measured, "let me make one thing clear. What you did in my store was unacceptable. Not only did you physically assault an employee, but you also subjected her to verbal abuse rooted in prejudice. That kind of behavior has no place in our society or in my business." Victoria opened her mouth to protest, but Marcus raised a hand, silencing her. "I understand that you've issued a public apology, but let's be honest, it fell short. Your words lacked sincerity, and your attempts to shift blame undermined any credibility you might have hoped to regain. So here's what's going to happen." He slid a document across the table, its contents outlined in precise detail. "You will attend mandatory sensitivity training sessions, facilitated by experts in diversity and inclusion. Additionally, you will perform 200 hours of community service, working directly with organizations that support marginalized communities. Finally, you will donate a significant portion of your fortune, 10% of your net worth, to charities focused on combating racial injustice and promoting workplace equality." Victoria's lawyer immediately objected, arguing that these terms were excessive and punitive, but Marcus remained unmoved. "These are non-negotiable," he said firmly. "If you refuse, we will pursue legal action against you. Trust me when I say that the evidence against you is damning. And given the current climate, I doubt the court system or the public will look kindly upon your defense." Faced with no other options, Victoria reluctantly agreed to the terms. She signed the document with trembling hands, her pride shattered. As she left the building, escorted by her lawyer, Marcus watched her go with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice had been served, but it came at a cost, not just for Victoria but for everyone involved. Back at the store, Amara tried to return to some semblance of normalcy. Her co-workers continued to rally around her, offering unwavering support. Customers who visited the store expressed solidarity, sharing stories of their own struggles with discrimination. Some even purchased items specifically to show their appreciation for Amara's courage. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere in the store shifted, from one of tension and unease to one of unity and empowerment. Inspired by the overwhelming response, Amara began channeling her emotions into her passion for design. Late at night, after her shifts ended, she sketched ideas for a new collection of jewelry. Each piece was infused with meaning, designed to celebrate diversity and resilience. One necklace featured interlocking chains, symbolizing strength in unity. Another showcased a bold emerald pendant representing growth and renewal. For the first time in her life, Amara felt truly inspired, not just to create beautiful things, but to use her art as a platform for change. Word of her designs spread quickly, thanks in part to the media coverage surrounding the incident. A local fashion blogger featured her sketches in an article, praising their uniqueness and emotional depth. Soon, inquiries poured in from boutique owners and designers eager to collaborate. Amara realized that this could be the start of something extraordinary, a chance to turn pain into purpose. As she worked tirelessly on her collection, Amara reflected on everything that had happened. The slap, though painful, had awakened something within her, a determination to rise above hatred and ignorance. She understood now that true strength lay not in revenge or bitterness, but in grace and perseverance. And while the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, she knew she wasn't walking it alone. Her father, her co-workers, her friends, and even strangers who believed in her, they were all part of her journey. Little did Amara know, her story was far from over. The ripple effects of that single moment in the jewelry store would continue to shape not just her life, but the lives of countless others. The weeks that followed the incident at the jewelry store brought significant changes for everyone involved. For Amara, life had taken on a new rhythm, one filled with both challenges and unexpected opportunities. The public outcry over Victoria Sterling's actions had not only brought attention to workplace discrimination, but also highlighted the importance of standing up against injustice. Amara, who had initially felt overwhelmed by the spotlight, began to embrace it as a chance to inspire others. One evening, after closing time at the store, Amara sat at her small kitchen table, surrounded by sketches and swatches of fabric. Her dreams of becoming a fashion designer were no longer distant aspirations. They were taking shape right in front of her. Each piece she designed carried a story. Her story. There was a bracelet adorned with tiny stars, symbolizing hope even in the darkest moments. A ring featured interlocking circles representing unity and resilience. Every creation was infused with meaning, reflecting the lessons she had learned through adversity. Her co-workers noticed the transformation in her. Gone was the quiet, reserved young woman who kept mostly to herself. In her place stood someone more confident, more vocal about her ambitions. She shared her designs with them during breaks, explaining the inspiration behind each piece. They encouraged her endlessly, offering feedback and ideas. "You're going to be huge," one of them said with a grin. "Just wait, you'll see." Amara smiled, grateful for their support. But deep down, she knew that success wouldn't come easily. The world of fashion was competitive, and breaking into it required more than talent. It demanded persistence, strategy, and connections. Still, she refused to let doubt creep in. Instead, she focused on honing her craft, determined to make her mark. Meanwhile, Victoria Sterling's life continued its downward spiral. After agreeing to Marcus Thompson's terms, she reluctantly attended sensitivity training sessions. At May 1st, she approached them with skepticism, rolling her eyes at the exercises and dismissing the instructor's advice. But as the weeks went by, something shifted. Perhaps it was the weight of public scrutiny or the realization that her behavior had cost her everything she held dear. Whatever the reason, Victoria began to listen, not because she wanted to, but because she had no other choice. The training sessions forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself. She learned about systemic racism, unconscious bias, and the impact of microaggressions. For the first time in her life, she heard firsthand accounts from people who had experienced discrimination. Their stories stayed with her long after the sessions ended, haunting her thoughts and challenging her worldview. In addition to the training, Victoria fulfilled her community service requirement by volunteering at a local shelter for women and children. Initially, she viewed it as a chore, another box to check off her list. But as she interacted with the residents, hearing their struggles and triumphs, she began to see them as individuals rather than statistics. One woman, in particular, left a lasting impression on her. Maria, a single mother of two, worked tirelessly to provide for her family despite facing countless obstacles. Her resilience inspired Victoria, reminding her of qualities she had long forgotten within herself: empathy, humility, and perseverance. Despite these small steps toward redemption, Victoria remained largely isolated. Friends and acquaintances avoided her, fearing association with someone whose reputation had been tarnished. Brands that once sought her endorsement now ignored her emails. Even her family maintained a cautious distance, unsure of how to reconcile the person she had become with the loved one they remembered. Yet, amidst the loneliness, Victoria found solace in reflection. She journaled daily, pouring her thoughts onto paper in an effort to process her emotions. Writing became therapeutic, allowing her to confront her mistakes without judgment. Slowly but surely, she began rebuilding her life, not as the glamorous socialite she once was, but as someone striving to do better. Back at the jewelry store, Dr. Marcus Thompson announced major changes to the company's policies and practices. He called a meeting with all employees, emphasizing the importance of creating a safe and inclusive workplace. What happened here was unacceptable, he told them. his voice firm yet compassionate. It's my responsibility to ensure that no employee ever feels disrespected or devalued again. To back up his words, Marcus implemented several initiatives. First, he established a zero-tolerance policy for any form of harassment or discrimination, clearly outlining consequences for violations. Second, he introduced mandatory diversity training for all staff members, ensuring that everyone understood the value of inclusivity. Finally, he created an anonymous reporting system, allowing employees to voice concerns without fear of retaliation. Employees welcomed these changes, feeling empowered by the renewed commitment to fairness and respect. Many praised Marcus for his leadership, noting how his actions reflected genuine care for their well-being. For Amara, seeing her father step up in such a meaningful way filled her with pride. Though she still hadn't revealed to her coworkers that Marcus was her dad, she couldn't help but admire the man he was, a man who used his power to uplift others rather than exploit them. As the months passed, Amara's jewelry collection gained traction. Local boutiques expressed interest in showcasing her pieces, while online platforms featured her work in articles about emerging designers. Encouraged by the positive reception, she decided to take a bold step, launching her own brand. With the help of her coworkers who pitched in to organize a launch event, Amara prepared to unveil her creations to the world. The day of the event arrived, and the store transformed into a vibrant gallery space. Display cases sparkled with Amara's designs, each accompanied by cards detailing the inspiration behind them. Customers mingled, admiring the craftsmanship and uniqueness of the pieces. Some recognized Amara from the viral videos and approached her to express their admiration. Others simply marveled at the beauty of her work, unaware of the journey that had led her here. Speeches were given, applause erupted, and tears were shed. When it was Amara's turn to speak, she took a deep breath and stepped forward, her heart pounding. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "This collection is more than just jewelry. It's a celebration of resilience, diversity, and the strength we find when we stand together. I hope it inspires you to embrace your own stories and remember that even in the face of adversity, there is always light." Her words resonated deeply with those in attendance. Strangers hugged her, congratulating her on her courage and creativity. Reporters scribbled notes, eager to capture the essence of her message. By the end of the night, Amara's collection had sold out, and orders poured in from across the country. For Marcus, watching his daughter shine was one of the proudest moments of his life. He stood quietly in the background, observing the joy and excitement radiating from everyone around him. Though he played no direct role in organizing the event, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment knowing that his efforts to create a supportive environment had helped Amara thrive. As the crowd dispersed and the store returned to its usual calm, Amara lingered for a moment, taking it all in. She glanced at her father, who gave her a subtle nod of approval. It was a silent acknowledgement of everything they had overcome together: the challenges, the pain, and ultimately, the growth. Little did Amara realize, however, that this was only the beginning. Her journey had ignited a movement, inspiring others to challenge inequality and strive for change. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly have its share of twists and turns, she faced it with unwavering determination, ready to leave her mark on the world, one sparkling piece at a time. The aftermath of the jewelry store incident continued to ripple outward, touching lives in ways no one could have anticipated. For Amara, the launch of her jewelry collection marked a turning point, not just in her career, but in how she viewed herself and her place in the world. What had started as a personal project born out of pain and resilience had blossomed into something far greater, a symbol of hope, unity, and empowerment. Her designs resonated deeply with people from all walks of life, sparking conversations about representation, self-worth, and the beauty of diversity. Amara's newfound success brought opportunities she hadn't dreamed possible. Fashion magazines featured her work on their covers, praising her innovative approach and meaningful storytelling. Bloggers and influencers clamored to showcase her pieces, sharing heartfelt testimonials about how her jewelry made them feel seen and celebrated. Orders flooded in from across the globe, and soon, Amara found herself managing not just a side hustle, but a thriving business. She hired a small team to help with production and logistics, ensuring that every piece was crafted with care and precision. Despite the growing demands of entrepreneurship, she remained grounded, never forgetting the journey that had brought her here. One afternoon, as Amara sat at her desk sketching ideas for her next collection, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Marcus, her father, who rarely called during work hours unless it was important. "Amara," he said when she answered, his tone unusually serious. "Turn on the news, there's something you need to see." Curious and slightly apprehensive, Amara grabbed the remote and switched on the television. The screen displayed footage of Victoria Sterling attending a press conference alongside representatives from several advocacy groups. Dressed modestly in a simple blouse and skirt, Victoria looked nothing like the haughty socialite who had once strutted into the jewelry store. Her expression was somber, almost vulnerable as she addressed the crowd gathered before her. "I stand before you today not as someone seeking forgiveness," Victoria began, her voice trembling slightly, "but as someone committed to making amends. My actions in the past were wrong, deeply wrong, and I take full responsibility for the harm I caused. To Amara Thompson and to anyone else who has ever felt diminished or disrespected because of who they are, I offer my sincerest apology." The room fell silent as Victoria paused, clearly struggling to find the right words. When she continued, her voice carried a weight of genuine remorse. "I've spent the last few months reflecting on my behavior, attending sensitivity training, and volunteering at organizations that support marginalized communities. Through these experiences, I've come to understand the profound impact of privilege and prejudice, and the importance of using my platform to promote equality rather than perpetuate division." Victoria then announced that she would be donating a substantial portion of her wealth to initiatives aimed at combating racial injustice and supporting underrepresented voices in various industries, including fashion. She pledged to mentor young designers from diverse backgrounds, offering resources and guidance to help them succeed. By the end of her speech, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Even Amara, watching from miles away, felt a lump rise in her throat. When the broadcast ended, Marcus turned to Amara over the phone. "What do you think?" he asked gently. Amara hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Part of her wanted to dismiss Victoria's apology as too little, too late. After all, the slap and the hateful words still lingered in her memory, reminders of a moment she couldn't erase. But another part of her recognized the sincerity in Victoria's voice, the raw vulnerability that came with admitting fault and committing to change. "I don't know what to say," Amara admitted finally. "It's complicated." Marcus nodded, though she couldn't see him. "It's okay to feel conflicted," he said. "Healing isn't linear, and neither is forgiveness. Just know that whatever you decide, I'm proud of you, for staying strong, for turning pain into purpose, and for inspiring others to do the same." Over the following weeks, Victoria kept her promises. She immersed herself in advocacy work, partnering with organizations dedicated to dismantling systemic barriers and amplifying marginalized voices. Her transformation became a topic of discussion in media circles, with some applauding her efforts and others remaining skeptical. Critics argued that her actions were motivated by guilt or public pressure rather than genuine conviction. But Victoria didn't let the negativity deter her. Instead, she focused on the positive changes she could contribute to, however small they might seem. For Amara, life moved forward at a steady pace. Her jewelry line gained even more traction, thanks in part to collaborations with prominent figures in the fashion industry. One day, she received an email from a renowned designer inviting her to showcase her work at an upcoming International Fashion Week. The opportunity was both thrilling and daunting, pushing her out of her comfort zone in ways she hadn't imagined. Yet with the unwavering support of her family, friends, and team, she embraced the challenge head-on. As preparations for the event intensified, Amara found herself reflecting on how far she had come since that fateful day at the jewelry store. The slap, a moment that had once defined her vulnerability, now seemed like a distant memory overshadowed by growth and triumph. She realized that while Victoria's actions had left scars, they had also ignited a fire within her. A fire to create, to inspire, and to prove that kindness and grace could overcome cruelty and ignorance. The night of the fashion show arrived, and Amara stood backstage, her heart racing with anticipation. Models dressed in her creations lined up, ready to walk the runway. Each piece shimmered under the lights, telling stories of resilience, identity, and hope. When the music began and the first model stepped onto the catwalk, the audience erupted into applause. Camera flashes illuminated the room as journalists jotted down notes and attendees marveled at the craftsmanship and symbolism woven into every design. By the time the final piece, a breathtaking necklace adorned with intricate patterns representing interconnectedness, made its way down the runway, tears streamed down Amara's face. She stepped out to take her bow, greeted by a standing ovation that echoed through the venue. In that moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for the success of her collection, but for the journey that had led her here. Among the audience sat Marcus, beaming with pride as he watched his daughter bask in the spotlight. Beside him was Victoria, who had been invited by Amara herself. Though their interaction had been brief, a polite exchange of pleasantries backstage, it symbolized a step toward reconciliation. Victoria clapped enthusiastically, her eyes glistening with emotion as she witnessed firsthand the impact of Amara's talent and determination. After the show, guests mingled at a lavish after-party, congratulating Amara on her achievements. Strangers approached her to share how her story had inspired them to pursue their own dreams despite adversity. Journalists peppered her with questions about her future plans, eager to document her rise in the fashion world. Amidst the chaos, Amara stole a quiet moment to reflect. She thought about the customers who had rallied around her, the co-workers who had supported her, and the strangers who had believed in her when she doubted herself. Most of all, she thought about her father, whose love and guidance had been her anchor throughout it all. As dawn broke over the city, signaling the end of a whirlwind evening, Amara knew that this was only the beginning. Her journey, from a young woman working behind the counter of a jewelry store to a celebrated designer making waves in the fashion industry, was proof that strength could emerge from struggle and light could shine even in the darkest moments. And though challenges lay ahead, she faced them with courage, knowing that she carried the hopes and dreams of countless others with her wherever she went. Months had passed since the fashion show that catapulted Amara into the global spotlight. Her name was now synonymous with innovation, inclusivity, and empowerment in the world of design. What had started as a small collection born out of personal pain had evolved into a thriving brand celebrated for its boldness and authenticity. Yet, despite her newfound fame, Amara remained deeply connected to her roots. She often visited the jewelry store where it all began, checking in on her former co-workers and sharing stories about her journey. To them, she wasn't just a successful designer. She was proof that resilience could transform adversity into triumph. The store itself underwent significant changes under Marcus's leadership. Inspired by the incident involving Victoria Sterling, he expanded his efforts to create a more inclusive and supportive workplace environment. Employee training programs focused not only on diversity but also on mental health awareness, ensuring that everyone felt valued and heard. The store became a hub for community events, hosting workshops and fundraisers aimed at uplifting underrepresented voices in the industry. Customers noticed the shift, a warmth and positivity that radiated from every corner of the space. Amara's collaboration with advocacy groups further solidified her commitment to using her platform for good. She partnered with organizations that supported young designers from marginalized backgrounds, offering scholarships and mentorship opportunities. Her annual Rising Stars initiative provided emerging talents with resources to launch their own collections, fostering a new generation of creators who prioritize storytelling and representation. For Amara, success wasn't just about personal achievement. It was about creating pathways for others to shine. Victoria Sterling, too, continued down her path of redemption. Though her reputation would never fully recover, She embraced her role as an advocate for change. She used her wealth and influence to fund projects that promoted equality and justice, working closely with activists and community leaders. Her involvement in these initiatives earned her cautious respect from those who had once dismissed her as irredeemable. While some remained skeptical of her motives, others acknowledged her genuine effort to make amends. One evening, during a charity gala hosted by one of the organizations Amara supported, the two women found themselves standing face to face, a moment neither had anticipated but both had prepared for. Victoria approached Amara hesitantly, extending her hand. "Thank you for inviting me tonight," she said softly. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know how much your strength has inspired me." Amara studied her for a moment, searching for any trace of the arrogance that had once defined Victoria. Instead, she saw humility, a willingness to listen, learn, and grow. Slowly, she reached out and shook Victoria's hand. "We've both come a long way," Amara replied, her voice steady and kind. "What matters is what we do moving forward." Their brief exchange marked a turning point, not just for them but for everyone watching. It served as a reminder that even the deepest wounds could heal with time, effort, and understanding. The crowd erupted into applause, moved by the symbolism of reconciliation and unity. As the years went by, Amara's brand grew into a global phenomenon. Her designs graced red carpets, magazine covers, and museum exhibitions, each piece carrying a message of hope and resilience. She opened flagship stores in major cities, each location reflecting her vision of inclusivity and creativity. Murals depicting her journey adorned the walls, inspiring visitors to dream big and persevere through challenges. At the heart of every store was a display case dedicated to her very first collection, the one that had started it all. Marcus watched his daughter's rise with immense pride, marveling at the woman she had become. He often joined her at events, standing quietly in the background as she delivered speeches or accepted awards. Their bond remained unshakable, strengthened by the trials they had faced together. On quieter days, they sat together in his office, reminiscing about the early days of the business and the lessons they had learned along the way. For Amara, the most fulfilling aspect of her success was the impact it had on others. Young designers wrote to her, thanking her for paving the way and showing them that their voices mattered. Parents shared stories of their children dressing up in outfits inspired by her designs, dreaming of becoming artists or entrepreneurs someday. Even strangers stopped her on the street to express gratitude for the courage she had shown in standing up against injustice. One day, as Amara walked through the bustling streets of the city, she paused in front of a billboard featuring one of her latest collections. The tagline read, "Strength Sparkles." Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized how far she had come, from a young girl sketching ideas in her notebook to a trailblazer reshaping the fashion industry. She thought about the slap, the humiliation, and the moments of doubt that had threatened to break her. But instead of bitterness, she felt gratitude for the people who had stood by her, the opportunities that had arisen from hardship, and the chance to inspire others to embrace their own light. Back at the jewelry store, life carried on as usual. Employees greeted customers with smiles, helping them find pieces that told their unique stories. Among the staff was a young woman named Maya, whose passion for design reminded Amara of herself years ago. Encouraged by Amara's example, Maya pursued her dreams, eventually launching her own line of accessories with Amara's guidance. On a sunny afternoon, Amara returned to the store, this time as a guest rather than an employee. She wandered through the aisles, running her fingers over the familiar displays. Memories flooded back, the laughter, the challenges, the moments of triumph. As she stood there, she noticed a little girl pointing excitedly at a necklace in the window. "Mommy, look!" the child exclaimed. "It's like the ones Amara Thompson makes." Amara smiled, feeling a surge of joy. In that moment, she understood the true legacy of her journey. It wasn't about fame or fortune, but about leaving behind a spark that could ignite change in someone else's life. And as she stepped outside into the bright sunlight, she knew that her story was far from over. There were still dreams to chase, barriers to break, and hearts to touch. The city buzzed around her, alive with possibility. Amara took a deep breath, ready to face whatever lay ahead. After all, she had already proven that no obstacle was insurmountable. Not when you carried the strength to turn pain into purpose and the courage to shine brightly, no matter the odds.